So to keep your customers from switching to your competitor, you need to keep in mind that they have strategic options too, and that's what we're going to look at in this short video. And just to recall, consumers will only switch if the costs of switching are smaller than the combined utility increase from switching and the additional goodie that they would receive if they switched. And this is what this inequality tells us. The switching costs have to be smaller than the utility increase and the goodie that they get. Which of course means for consumers that they have an incentive. They want to decrease switching costs to avoid being locked in. But how do they do this? How can they decrease their switching cost? Well, for starters, they could choose an open standard. They could you choose a standard that's not supplier specific for their data and for their complementary goods. So in software, for example, if you choose a standard, if you choose a format that can be used across different vendors, across different suppliers, then it's of course going to be much easier to switch from one supplier to the other. In a similar vein, you could use toner cartridges that are flexible, i.e. that can be used for printers by different manufacturers, which again is going to decrease the switching cost from going from one to the next. Another strategy is to just use a second supplier or engage in what's called second sourcing. So IBM, for example, will purchase processors both from Intel and from AMD. So these are the two largest players in the market for microprocessors, but IBM chose to get deliveries from both because that means that whenever Intel starts getting complicated, whenever they're not happy with the prices they're charging IBM and so on, IBM can always threaten to go and purchase more from AMD instead. And finally, a third way of decreasing switching cost is if you just can't avoid it, right? If there's just no way of being locked in eventually, you can use the anticipated switching cost to negotiate a price reduction before you become locked in. So in other words, if there's just no way of avoiding switching costs, if you just cannot help it, eventually you expect to be locked in. But if you know that you're being locked in, you can negotiate a lower price to become locked in. So in other words, when you're Delta, when you're any kind of airline, you know that if you buy a plane, you're going to be using that for the next 15, 20, 25 years. And therefore, you're going to have to use consumer service, you're going to have to use maintenance services and so on by Boeing, which is going to incur, which is going to mean additional cost, significant additional cost from using that particular supplier. And in that case, anticipating that, Delta can negotiate a lower purchase price for the plane itself. So after a brief in-video quiz, let's wrap up. So we've now looked at what we can do to lock our consumers in and what our customers can in turn do to avoid such a situation. So now it's time to consider the strategic options of your competitors, who are of course a third player in this game, and they're eager to snatch our loyal consumers from our hands. And I hope to see you in the next video.